The Confederacy of Independent Systems employed some of the most effective droid models in galactic history during the Clone Wars, the infamous Droideka among them. Nicknamed destroyer droids, Droidekas were incredibly formidable battle droids, known for their unusual configuration, their individual energy shields, and their devastating blaster cannons. Even Jedi struggled to best these fearsome units, and their effectiveness made the Confederacy desperate to purchase more of them. They made many deals with Colicoid Creation Nest to ramp up Droideka production, one of which involved shipping containers of raw meat to Colo 4. In this video, we're going to be talking about the iconic Droideka and why it was so effective.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Droideka was designed by the Colicoid Creation Nest, which also designed the Buzz Droid, the Droid Tri-Fighter, the Scorpinek Annihilator Droid, the Drock-class boarding craft, and the Protodeca. The Creation Nest was one of several specialized Colicoid nests, which operated under the rule of Colicoid Sovereign Nest. The insectoid Colicoids were reclusive, mostly sticking to their homeworld of Colo 4 and the systems around it, but they were also known to accept manufacturing contracts from outsiders. Millennia before the Clone Wars, for example, they had designed battle droids for the Sith Empire. The Colicoids designed the Droideka in their own image, basing the droid's posture and stance on their own. This was the origin of one of the Droideka's most distinctive features. The insectoid Colicoids were capable of curling up into balls and rolling as a form of locomotion, a trait they imparted to their destroyer droids. When curled up, Droidekas were easy to store and incredibly fast. Their rolling ability made it easy for them to deploy large numbers of them rapidly. Though Droidekas were a bit vulnerable when in this configuration. When not rolling, Droidekas used repulsor lifts built into the bottom of their reactor bulbs for support and 3 legs for maneuvering. Since Droidekas required a considerable amount of power to activate, they featured their own small built-in reactors, which were located in a bulb where the legs joined. This bulb primarily powered the droid's deflector shields, while power for its blasters and sensors was supplemented by a series of power cells running up the droid's spine. Droidekas were very spindly in design. Like the B-1 battle droids, they would eventually come to work alongside, but their crucial systems were protected by case-hardened bronzium armor plating. The droids' heads, deflector plates, and reactor bulbs were encased in bronzium, and they featured additional bronzium plating on their shoulders and along the backs of their spines. Droidekas relied on a rather unusual set of sensor systems, which set them apart from other droids. Most droids used photoreceptors to perceive targets, electronic systems that essentially acted like the human eye, turning patterns of light into images. Droidekas instead perceived the world through non-visual composite radiation sensors, which made them immune to light-based stunning attacks and enabled them to detect targets more easily than most droids. It was quite difficult for meatbags to evade destroyer droids, which made them quite useful as guards. It's hard to imagine a fiercer battlefield opponent than the Droideka. These droids featured powerful deflector shields that could safely absorb anything up to a blast from light artillery, and solid objects had to move slowly to pass through them. These shields formed a bubble around the droids, protecting them from harm on all sides. They were also polarized, allowing blaster bolts and the like to pass through the shields when going out, but not when going in. Droidekas featured a pair of dual blaster cannons which fired extremely potent bolts at a very high rate. When deployed, Droidekas could unleash a positively withering stream of blaster energy, shredding anything in their path while remaining safe from harm. Over the course of the prequel era, the Colicoids designed 3 distinct series of Droideka. The original destroyer droids, the P-series Droidekas, were the ones used by Trade Federation during the Battle of Naboo. Many of these units had their droid brains replaced with relays that linked them to the Federation's central control computers, allowing them to be operated in tandem with the rest of the Trade Defense Force's droid army. Though this made the Droidekas less intelligent, it did not significantly decrease their effectiveness in combat, fortunately, for the Trade Federation. By the time of the Battle of Geonosis, P-series Droidekas had become obsolete, replaced by the W-series Droidekas. These droidekas featured slightly larger blaster arms and more powerful blaster cannons, which were considerably more destructive than those used by the P-series droideka. W-series droidekas were powerful enough that they were sometimes classified as mobile, autonomous light artillery. But this increase in destructive force did have a cost. These more powerful blasters required a lot more power than the blasters of the P-series droideka. As a result, W-series droidekas rarely used their deflector shields, opting to save power and rely on their blasters to kill an enemy before they could open fire. This flaw was fixed in the Q-series droideka, the most advanced droideka model of the original line. First deployed during the early months of the Clone Wars, the Q-series droideka featured even more powerful blasters than its predecessor, but also corrected the overheating and power shortage problems the W-series had suffered from. As a result, these droidekas used their shields just as much as the obsolete P-series droidekas had, all while retaining the superior firepower of the W-series. Additionally, the Q-series droideka came with slightly stronger bronzium plates. This was the droideka model favored by the Confederacy of Independent Systems for most of the Clone Wars. All of these droideka models were highly effective, as we all surely know from watching the movies and the Clone Wars. This made them highly sought after combat units, but the Colicoids charged a high price for them. Just one droideka was 200 times the price of a B1 battle droid, which is somewhere in the ballpark of 360,000 credits for just one droideka. Only the wealthiest non-Republic factions like the Trade Federation and later the CIS could afford that price. Of course, just because they could afford it didn't mean they wanted to pay it. The Trade Federation approached the Colicoid Sovereign Nest asking for discounts on bulk shipments of the droids, and they were told they could get their discounts if they paid in something the Colicoids considered more valuable than credits: meat. The Colicoids were carnivores, and they were eternally ravenous, with a special hunger for a number of rare, exotic meats from the far corners of the galaxy. The Trade Federation was easily able to acquire massive shipments of these exotic meats, which were sent to the Colour 4 in bulk. The grateful Colicoids gave them bulk shipments of droidekas in turn. The Trade Federation ended up with hundreds of droidekas, though, as you might say, it cost them an arm and a leg. The Confederacy of Independent Systems was also able to secure discounts on droidekas by paying in raw meat, though this was on top of the discounts they got by virtue of Colour 4's secession from the Republic. The Confederacy typically deployed droidekas as fast-moving shock units, intended to soak up incoming fire while simultaneously spraying blaster bolts across the battlefield. Walls of them were often deployed to reinforce key fronts, where they would form up between other droid units and the enemy, giving their allies a hot second to regroup. They were also commonly deployed as a sort of mobile turret, positioned at key points on the battlefield to keep the enemy away from crucial targets. During the Clone Wars, Loyalist soldiers quickly learned to fear them and their incredible destructive potential. Very few droidekas participated in the first Battle of Geonosis at the outbreak of the Clone Wars. The reason for this was simple. Droidekas had been given preferential treatment when the Geonosians were loading up the Separatists' troop ships prior to the battle. As a result, most of the available droidekas on Geonosis were already packed away, rendering them unavailable when the Grand Army of the Republic attacked. Just 3,000 droidekas fought in that first battle, which was greatly disproportionate in comparison to the million B1 battle droids and 100,000 B2 super battle droids that fought on Geonosis. Many of these droidekas were deployed and destroyed in the initial arena battle, while the rest were all thrown into the fray on the battlefront to the immediate east of the arena. After Geonosis, however, droidekas quickly became prevalent. At first, the Confederacy primarily used W-series droidekas, which, as mentioned earlier, used their shields less. The W-series was last used in the Battle of Moonalist, following which they were replaced by the more powerful Q-series. The increased effectiveness of the Q-series meant the droideka saw another spike in popularity after Moonalist. Droidekas were a common sight on the battlefields of the Clone Wars right up until the conflict's end. An unusually large number of droidekas participated in the Battle of Coruscant at the war's climax. In that battle, they were deployed across Galactic City to cause chaos as cover for the kidnapping of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Some carried out concerted attacks on key targets, while others just went around causing aimless destruction. They penetrated even the most secure buildings on Coruscant during the battle. HoloNet feeds from the battle showed them gunning down clone troopers in the Senate building itself, which many fearful loyalists took as a sign that the Republic was doomed. Of course, that wasn't the case. The Republic ultimately won the Clone Wars, though it became the Empire in doing so. All the droidekas that survived the conflict were shut down following the mission to Mustafar, at least for a little while. Smugglers and crime lords immediately went around stealing droidekas from separatist warehouses and reactivating them, while the remaining droidekas were claimed by the Empire. The Empire incorporated these fearsome battle droids into the Imperial Stormtrooper Corps, in which they served as support units. So that's our look at the devastating droideka, one of the coolest looking and most effective battle droids of all time. But what do you think? Are there other types of droids you'd like us to take a look at? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments below.